Monday morning to all of you. Thanks for tuning into The Sweat. I'm your host, Jessie Coffield. Lots to get to on this Monday morning. We're going to discuss tonight's 4-game NHL slate, how to approach the Monday Night Football Showdown contest. We're going to take an early look at Week 13 in the NFL, but we're starting by taking a look back at everything in Week 12. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Piers Dietrich, and Kenny Ducey are here for NFL Hangover, where we overreact to what happened in Week 12. As always, we lead the week off with the Titans game. But this week, let's talk about the team that beat the Titans, the Patriots. Pats are plus 450 to win the conference right now. So do you like that bet, Jeff? Or maybe stick with the Titans at plus 1,200, chalk the last two losses up to being so beat up by injuries?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually would take the longer odds here just because it's such a discrepancy. And look, it really does come down to schedule. I mean, the Patriots are the better team. I'm a Titans guy. I bet them when they were bigger than this a little while ago. But, the Patriots are at full health. They're obviously got a really good defense right now. The problem with the Patriots is they have to play the Bills twice, right? So if you're betting them to win the AFC conference right now, the Titans still have a clear path, at least in my opinion, to grabbing some wins here down the stretch. So the Patriots, I just don't think a plus 450 with them having the Bills twice on the schedule makes for that great a bet right now. I still like this team a lot, and it wouldn't shock me if they ended up winning the conference, but I think the Titans are getting slightly better value.
Piers, do you agree? Do you think the Titans have better value at plus 1,200?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the better value idea. It is 2021, so I can't fault anyone for taking the longer shots, but there's a reason why it's going to pay you more because it's less likely to happen. I feel like I've been overreacting every single week a little bit by saying the Titans are terrible and the Patriots are great, but every week it proves that maybe I'm not overreacting. Maybe the Patriots are the best team in the AFC, and maybe the Titans, not maybe, the Titans are a lot worse than, the record indicates. They don't have a running game. Yes, they had some big runs the other day, but they really don't have any running backs at the moment. Their offensive line in terms of adjusted sack rate and adjusted rushing yards, it's near the bottom. Their quarterback is inconsistent. They don't have any wide receivers. Their secondary has problems. They've got a good defensive line. Woohoo! Awesome. Great. Meanwhile, the Patriots are doing everything right. And I don't necessarily think that the Bills playing them twice is a bad thing. If the Patriots beat the Bills twice, there's a good chance that they will get home field advantage all the way through the playoffs. That's kind of a big deal when you play your games in New England.
Yeah, Kenny, Pats plus 450. Do you like that bet?
Yeah, why are we talking about the big bad Bills here? I mean, it's not like this team has really, look, they obviously beat up on a terrible team on Thanksgiving, but going into that game, it wasn't like this team was running away as the clear favorite in the AFC. I don't like betting any of the favorites, and when you look past the Patriots, there's the Ravens who, absolutely not, right? The Bengals, the Titans, the Chargers and Browns. Like, we know those teams are bad teams, the only team I'm really going to take a shot on, I think, is the Colts at plus 2,500. They played a really good game yesterday against a great Buccaneers team. Carson Wentz, of all people, looked fantastic against a good secondary. And Jonathan Taylor was able to almost rush for 100 yards on perhaps the best rushing defense in football. I know that it's a long shot, but if you're not going to pony up for the Chiefs at plus 300, which I would believe in my heart of hearts that they're going to be the favorites to win the AFC, and I think that they'll ultimately do it, then I'm going to take the Colts at plus 2,500 because I really think they play really great on both sides of the football, and they have no business being level with the Browns and one behind the Chargers here. I know that they play in a really difficult division, but I think that they can ultimately get it done.
All right, Ian Rappaport of NFL Media reported Sunday that barring a Super Bowl run, the 49ers plan to trade Jimmy Garoppolo after the season and hand the offense over to Trey Lance. So, Piers, Jimmy G has the 49ers in the playoff hunt right now. Are they a lock for a wild card at this point? I mean, the sportsbook has them at minus 250 to make the playoffs.
First of all, there aren't any locks in 2021, so we can just go ahead and get rid of that idea right now. They have a really good chance. They have a better chance than anyone. And then in the Jimmy Garoppolo department, he shouldn't really take any offenses. No one expected him to be back. And we saw this treatment to Alex Smith a couple seasons ago where he took the Chiefs to the playoffs, and he knew he was going out, and Mahomes was taking over. And there was no hard feelings whatsoever. Meanwhile, San Francisco looks good. Brandon Ayuk has turned it on this month. Samuel is being used in all different facets of the game. Kittle is back. He's healthy. Jeff's favorite, Eli Mitchell, is back and looks really good. They've got a top 10 defense. They're not a lock to make the playoffs, but I would say they're one of the 5 closest to being a lock.
Kenny, there's no locks in 2021, but what's your take on this?
I don't think that the 49ers are a lock at all to make the playoffs. I think that, really the Vikings, are we going to rate that win highly? And really it was a game they almost blew. They were behind for a lot of the game. I don't know. I don't think this team's that good still. I'm still waiting to see more. And Garoppolo, when they're winning, they're really winning in spite of Jimmy G. He had 230 yards, a touchdown, a bad pick in the first quarter yesterday that almost kind of set them off on the wrong foot. He's, ranked 23rd in terms of quarterbacks for Pro Football Focus, tied with Daniel Jones, just ahead of Baker Mayfield. He doesn't really make good company here. Carson Wentz is right there ahead of him in terms of, the way that he's graded out as a passer, and he just really hasn't lit it up at all. I think what you're learning here, and you can look at the Rams as a good example, is you should just never be satisfied with your quarterback position. And a lot of teams now have had a lot of turnover at that position. They've continued to try to draft and sign guys and find the right guy. Jimmy G is just not that right guy. He brought you went to a Super Bowl. He couldn't bring you the win. Instead of just, wasting away with Jared Goff, the Rams went out and got Matt Stafford. They're going to now go out and get someone else that Matt Stafford doesn't have an elbow anymore. I think the Niners are very smart here to continue to turn it over and find a good quarterback because they obviously have some great pieces on offense. They have the speedster and Deebo Samuel, and they have a pretty good defense as well. And a good coach, right? They just need a quarterback.
All right, Jeff, what do you think?
I mean, I think that if you go to the DraftKings Sportsbook, I'm surprised you can even get minus 250 for the San Francisco 49ers to make the playoffs. Look, Kenny's kind of right. I mean, they're not like the greatest team on earth or something, but it just comes down to where they are in the standings. Who is going to catch the San Francisco 49ers? The 49ers are in the 6th seed right now. They just took care of the Vikings, who they were neck and neck with. And, they've got the Vikings at 5 and 6. They've got, Atlanta and New Orleans? Like, those teams are going to get hot and somehow catch the 49ers. 49ers have a couple, really easy games. They have the Falcons on the schedule. They have the Texans as well. And, the Rams haven't played good, neither the Seahawks. So I just don't see this team all of a sudden imploding unless they get major, major injury problems down the stretch. And they do have a good backup in Trey Lance. I think you're actually getting really good value at minus 250. This team is in a really good spot to get into the postseason right now.
All right, Packers got another quality win over the Rams on Sunday. We keep saying it. They're still behind the Cardinals and Bucs for conference winner odds, but are they the best team in the NFL right now, Kenny?
I think so. I really do. Look, I know that we've seen all the times that, Aaron Rodgers has disappointed us this year. It's been a few games, right? But there's always been an excuse, and there's always been a good excuse. It's because this Packers team has dealt with so many injuries, so many huge injuries, maybe more than any team in football, and they continue to win football games. And I'll tell you this much, right? Last year, really the last 3-4 years, what's been the biggest Achilles heel of the Green Bay Packers? It's been this defense, right? This defense has been terrible. Aaron Rodgers has done such a masterful job on offense. They've scored so many points. They're one of the best offensive football, but they haven't had any support on defense. Mike Pettin let this team down year after year. And what have we seen this year? An influx of great playmakers. They've had an insane season on defense, one of the best 5 defenses in football, according to the metrics. And, it's also a unit that's been hurt, right? Jair Alexander's been out of the lineup. I think that this is a team that when they get healthy, and they will get healthy, at least healthier in 5 or 6 weeks, makes a giant run in the postseason. They absolutely go to the NFC Championship game. I think they go ahead and win the Super Bowl the way that they have played on defense. Everyone likes to focus on Aaron Rodgers and A.J. Dillon. Devontae Adams looked great again yesterday. I don't care, right? We know that the Packers are going to score. What about this defense? Another great performance. And I think that ultimately that's what can lead them to the Super Bowl.
Jeff, are the Packers the best team in the NFL right now?
I mean, it's hard for me to say they're better than the Bucs because the Bucs are winning at the same rate and the Bucs beat them last year. But everything Kenny said is right. And you have to look at the Packers. They're a top 5 defense. Their best 2 defensive players, they're likely going to get back in the next 4 or 5 weeks before the postseason. Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith. This is a team that's going to get better. I've said it all year. This team just feels like it's a veteran team. It's going about its business in a really weak division, and they're just going to be peaking. So I think what you'll see is the Packers come playoff time probably be right up there with the Bucs. And I think the biggest thing here is, again, we're on a betting show. We're talking about odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You can get the Packers at almost double the odds at the NFC Conference to win the NFC Conference as the Bucs. I will take that regardless of what your feeling is on who the better team is. The Packers remain a really good bet to win the NFC, in my opinion.
All right, Pierce, what do we think?
Well, it's pretty simple if we're just going to look at Packers versus Buccaneers, and it's going to be whoever has home field advantage. If the Packers are playing at home in the playoffs, and there's no way Tom Brady is going into Green Bay and beating the team. We've seen Tampa struggle on the road. Tom Brady has a career of playing well in cold temperatures, but Tampa Bay doesn't necessarily do very well up in Green Bay. And like Kenny mentioned, this defense is really good. They're getting Jair Alexander back after the bye. They're going to get Zadarius Smith back at linebacker. The defense is only going to get better. Rodgers with more practice is only going to get better. Devontae Adams looks great. The running back tandem is looking better every single week. If MVS and Randall Cobbs continue to step up, then this team's very dangerous, and they look like a Super Bowl contender.
All right, Baltimore managed to grind out a win, and they maintain the number 1 seed. They're minus 175 to win the division, plus 550 to win the conference. But you can't be feeling great about the Ravens after Lamar Jackson's 4 interceptions. So, Jeff, what's your feeling about the Ravens and their future bets right now?
Honestly, I don't know. What to say about the Ravens? This is a team that just, defies logic in terms of their win-loss record. Against any other team, Lamar Jackson throws 4 picks, and they probably lose that game by 20. But because the Browns legitimately have no wide receivers and can't move the ball and can only win games when their defense limits team to 10 points, they win that game anyways. So I actually think Cincinnati is clearly the better team. The problem with the Bengals are they're also a young team, and I don't know if they quite have the confidence here to pull this out down the stretch. Look, I don't know. This one, I do not want to back the Ravens, but at the same time, every week I come on here and tell people, and Pierce says the same thing, we don't like this team, and they just keep winning. So I guess maybe now that I back Baltimore and say, you should probably just get on them, they'll just implode. But it does seem like a season where Lamar Jackson is just going to carry this team into the playoffs, regardless of how bad they are in other phases.
Pierce, you're trying to use reverse psychology, jumping on the Ravens now?
No, the Ravens are still frauds. They're at the top of my fraud list above the Titans. This is not a good team. It does not beat good competition. We saw them get smoked head-to-head by the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are the better team. They might be younger, but they're the better team. They're playing better. They're doing everything correctly. And just think, how do you stop Cincinnati? If you drop the safeties back to stop Jamar Chase, which we've seen teams do recently, well, guess what happens? Joe Mixon runs all over you. So if you bring the safeties up, put them in the box, try to shut down Joe Mixon, then Jamar Chase kills you. The Bengals defense is playing well. I think the biggest giveaway, if you want to compare these teams, you look at the Ravens going into next week. They're only favored by 2.5 points against Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, the Bengals just destroyed Pittsburgh. This is Cincinnati's division.
Kenny, what do we think?
Look, I know, Pierce, actually, you set me up pretty well for my point here, and that's that the Ravens, they not only run the football extremely well, 6th in rushing DVOA, but they are top 5 against the run, right? And that has been the calling card of this defense. When you look at the last 2 weeks, the last 2 wins by the Bengals over the Raiders and then a Steelers team that everyone pretty much agrees is bad, that is really where the confidence is built, right, for the Bengals. And we know that they have talent. We know that they have talent on both sides of the ball. But it's not been Joe Burrow gashing these defenses, right? Joe Mixon ran the ball 30 times. Joe Burrow threw for 148 yards against the Raiders. Very similar story yesterday. Joe Burrow only threw the ball 24 times. Mixon had a career game, I think 28 carries. That's not going to happen against the Baltimore Ravens. They shut down probably the – no, it happens sometimes, right? But they are still statistically very good against the run.
Did happen,
they were good. They were good last night against Nick Chubb, one of the best rushing offenses in football. They obviously got blown out by the Bengals, right? But they are a team that's been very inconsistent, and I think that they do have the tools, at least, to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, the 30-point loss looks bad on the resume, but Lamar Jackson is a former MVP. He's clearly shown the ability to win football games when this team is absolutely down in the dumps. They need to figure out their wide receiving options still for the years ahead. But look, I just think that this defense, this rushing defense, can step up. And honestly, Baker Mayfield, one of the worst quarterbacks in football, but I thought the coverage last night was pretty good downfield. And I thought they got a little hosed on the pass interference penalty. So I actually think that I've seen the last few weeks a little bit of an improvement in the coverage. I think they have the personnel at least to pull it out. But yeah, obviously we saw the Bengals beat them. I think that they can, in round 2 here, come up with the win.
They beat the Bears and the Browns with a broken quarterback.
Yeah, the Bengals?
No, the Ravens. The Ravens. They look good. They're playing nobodies.
Well, the Ravens also have one of the best rushing attacks in football, so.
All right, guys, take it to the Twitter streets. Thank you. Stick around. Actually, you can fight with each other later. You three will be back to give your favorite plays for the Seattle-Washington game, but hockey is next after this break. We've got a 4-game slate coming our way in the NHL this evening. Here to help us make sense of it is DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire's Paul Bruno, and AJ Schultz. Fellas, need your favorite DFS and sports betting plays on tonight's slate. Start with your favorite DFS play at center. Jeff, who are you going to go with?
I think you just pay up for Sidney Crosby here. I mean, Crosby coming back into form after obviously, the COVID and the wrist injury. But you look at his last 4 games, it's a short-term thing, but you've got to keep an eye when elite players start to shoot the puck a little bit more. He's got 4 points now in his last 2 games as well. Pittsburgh coming off a bad loss to Montreal. And look, I think everyone might shy away from Crosby here just because of the matchup with Calgary, but Markstrom, a goalie, I mean, certainly capable of just like throwing in a few bad games. Certainly due for a little bit of regression as well. I think you got to pay up for Crosby on this short slate just because that production's really been there over his last few games.
All right, what do you think, Paul?
I play the elimination game here, Jesse. I will avoid the Canucks and Canadian centers in that toilet bowl matchup this evening. I feel like the top Flame centers and Crosby will negate one another in a tough matchup that will feature great goaltending, so I'll fade them. I don't trust the expansion level rosters of both Seattle or Buffalo, so I'm left with the Winnipeg centers in a mismatch against their opponent tonight, the Coyotes. That means that I'll be rostering both Dubois and Scheifele, who are respectively priced at $6,700 and $6,400 each.
All right, AJ, who's your favorite DFS play at center?
Well, Paul's been giving me a hard time about not using my Penguins lately, and today that ends. I'm all in with Jeff here in using Sidney Crosby for all the reasons that Jeff highlighted. Add into the fact in the 16 games that Crosby has faced the Flames in his career, he's got 13 goals plus another 10 assists. That's really, really good numbers, 23 points in 16 games against the Flames. Yeah, Markstrom's been having a good year, but the Penguins are rolling right now, and it's all because of their captain, Sidney Crosby.
All right, move it on over to the wing, Paul. Who you going with?
Well, remember my strategy for baseball DFS, Jesse? I would always go to the power hitters who were on hot streaks. The same strategy will apply for me tonight. With my cheap centers in place, I can afford to pay up for Winnipeg's Kyle Connor, who has 6 goals and 2 helpers, along with an amazing 49 shots on goal in his last 10 games. That'll cost me $7,600. I also don't mind going to the other side of that matchup to pick up the Pens' Jake Gunsel for $7,300 in that same tilt. He's been similarly productive with 5 goals, 10 points, and 46 shots on goal in his last 10 games. With that Winnipeg stack planned tonight, I will also fit in Blake Wheeler in a low $4,800 price point, as he's just starting to find his lane as a productive top 6 winger. He's been that way throughout his career, and he's coming back to normal after some time on the shelf. And finally, the Canadians will be looking to their emotional leader, Brendan Gallagher, to pick them up after the off-ice management changes that took place over the weekend.
All right, AJ, who you going with on the wing?
Well, look, 4 of the 5 teams allowing the most goals per game in November are on this slate tonight. Like, there's a ton of bad defensive teams. So I think you can look outside of the normal teams you might look at here. And for me, that's the Seattle Kraken, and specifically Jordan Eberly tonight. He was previously bogged down in a mini 3-game slump, but he had a pair of goals against Florida on Saturday. He's not as pricey as, say, Kyle Connor and Jake Guentzel. You get a modicum of savings here at $6K. But look, there's a ton of guys you could use here. As I said, there's some really bad defensive teams playing tonight. All
right, Jeff, who you rolling with?
I like going to the Jets as well. I think Nikolai Ehlers, though, in GPPs will probably be a slightly lesser owned than Kyle Connor. Ehlers is averaging almost 4 shots on goal per game over his last 10. You got the Coyotes. They take the most penalties in the NHL. They have a bottom 5 penalty kill. Ehlers is going to be out there on the power play. And, this is a player who's due for a little bit of positive progression. His shooting percentage well under his career average right now. If you want value, I also like Josh Anderson. I like the Montreal Forwards definitely against Vancouver tonight. Josh Anderson, very productive, playing on that top line right now with Christian Dvorak. And don't be afraid to target the Canadians because, as AJ alluded to, there is some pretty much every bad defensive team is on the slate.
All right, let's turn our attention to the sports book. AJ, what's the best money line bet on the slate?
Well, there's no surprise coming in for me on this one. I like the Penguins tonight at plus 125 value against the Flames. You've got Tristan Jarry playing absolutely right, lights out right now. Let's not forget that 6-goal loss on Saturday was backstopped by Casey DeSmith. And really, he only allowed 3 goals in that game. That trio of empty netters really kind of skewed what that game looked like. when you actually watch what happened in that game. So to get really good value at plus 125 on the DK Sportsbook, I like the Penguins tonight.
All right, Jeff, what do we think? Best money line bet on the slate?
Well, as Paul alluded to, I'm going to go into the toilet bowl here with the Canucks and the Canadians, and I'm going to back the Canadians here as the home team. I mean, look, these teams are equally bad. I feel like the Canadians should be getting a little bit more respect as the home team. They're only minus 125. I like that. The Canadians have averaged 4 goals per game over their last 4 starts. Carey Price back on the ice, just skating with the team. That's a positive influence. They've gotten some of those management changes out. I just think that this is like the better team when you compare these two long term as well. Let's not forget the Canadians did go to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. I just think that they have a better balance up front as well. It's going to show tonight with the team playing slightly better against the Canucks team, who's just terrible at everything. So I think the Canadians are actually a really good money line play here.
All right, Paul, what do we think?
I agree with Jeff on that one. The Canadians will react positively to the management shakeup and defend their home court against a Canucks team that's just looking around, waiting for the same shoe to drop, and their focus will be elsewhere. So I say take the home side. I'm with Jeff. Minus 125 is a favorable payoff for me. And I also don't see why the Buffalo Sabres should be a home dog against the new club from Seattle. Even though the Kraken have won 3 of their last 4, Buffalo's looked pretty good in their last 2 games and should prevail here for a plus 130 payoff.
All right, Jeff, which game do you like to go over the total?
I'm going to go with this Winnipeg, Arizona one at over 5.5. I mean, look, the Jets, they've been a little bit snake bitten on offense. Like, they haven't really seen a breakout here. But I mentioned Nikolai Ehlers and Paul mentioned Kyle Connor. Like, this is just such a good spot for the Jets' top 6 forwards and just their top power play unit to get off here. You've also got, the Jets certainly defensively aren't really that good a team. They're not really good on the penalty kill either. The Coyotes have been playing a little bit better offensively. I think at 5.5, you got to take the over in this one because I just don't trust either team defensively enough to not for one of them not to let in 4 goals. So I think this is a very good over bet here with the Jets and the Coyotes.
All right, Paul, what do we think?
I certainly don't think the Pittsburgh-Calgary game is primed to go over with those 2 outstanding goalies in place. The stout defense will prevail in that one. But I do like the Jets to roll over the Coyotes, as I indicated earlier, and Jeff's right on. That 5.5 line should fall early, and I would even go for a better payoff at the plus 6.5 to get 140 as the payoff for me. And I also think the offensive pieces in Seattle and Buffalo should combine to go over the 5.5 line in that game against suspect defenses and goalies on both sides.
All right, AJ, what do we think?
Yeah, as Paul just mentioned here, I like Seattle Buffalo to go over. They're 2 of the worst teams this month in goals allowed at 3.75 for Seattle, 4.80 for Buffalo. You're getting fantastic value already just to take over 5.5. You get plus 105, but I would go a full goal more here on the DK Sportsbook, over 6.5 on the alternate line, which brings home plus 165. If you're a little if you're a little more risk averse than I am, you could consider making the push an option at over 6 to get plus 135.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We are back to football after a quick break. Welcome back to The Sweat and welcome back to DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Kenny Ducey, and Jeff Ulrich. Time to talk Monday Night Football, gentlemen. Need your favorite plays for the Seattle-Washington game. So, Pierce, who are you putting in the captain spot?
I'll go with a GPP play here, a little risky, but you got to be a little different in these situations. J.D. Mckissick at running back. We know that Seattle struggles against receiving running backs In one fewer game than the rest of the league, they've allowed the 8th most receptions to running backs and the most receiving yards to running backs. And it's just kind of their style of play. They've given up a lot of passing yards this season, and they have one of the lowest ADOTs. So they give up tons of these passes underneath. They don't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. That allows quarterbacks to check down. And I expect Mckissick to get you about 5, maybe 50 to 70 yard receiving, fall into the end zone. And with the savings and the boost, he should work for you in GPPs.
Kenny, who are you putting in the captain spot?
Yep, had almost the same exact stuff written down. Pierce is a smart guy. J.D. Mckissick at 10.8K. I think it's a really good deal for the reasons he mentioned. The Seahawks top 8 in targets and receptions allowed to opposing running backs, or top 10 rather. And J.D. Mckissick has just been on fire. He had a couple of bad weeks, but really bad for his standards is average of 8 fantasy points a week. And he also was dealing with injury, and now he's cleared from that injury. He should be ready to go. I also like Taylor Heineke, though, if I want to give another play at 14.7K. I think it's kind of disrespectful that another quarterback is the 4th or 5th highest priced player on the slate. Heineke coming off a 3-touchdown game, facing maybe the worst secondary in football, and he's 14.7K. I think I got to jump at that as well. I'm certainly going to have exposure to him in my captain spot, but I think McKissick is a good play.
All right, Jeff, these guys going with someone who's 10-8. Who are you putting in your captain spot?
I'm going to go with a little bit more vanilla with DK Metcalf. I assume he'll have some ownership, but him and Lockett always split it a little bit. And you've got Russell Wilson, who also garners some ownership there. It's just too good a matchup, I think, to go away from DK Metcalf here. We know that he's capable of those 35-point games. And, Washington features 2 corners, 6 feet tall. Metcalf's going to have a 3-inch height advantage to the team, or a defense in the football team as well, the Washington football team, giving up the 2nd most touchdowns to the wide receiver position. They give up a ton of yards to wide receivers as well. Metcalf's had 2 slow games with Russell Wilson, but the entire offense has sucked. His ADOT has been fine over the last 2 games, getting targeted downfield. I think eventually you're going to see a big game. This is the spot, man. I mean, you just don't get many pass defenses worse than Washington this year.
All right, Kenny, you're already putting a little value in your captain spot, but talk to me about a different value play you can use in your showdown lineup.
Yeah, you don't get many worse secondaries in Washington. One of them may be the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm looking to target them with one of these cheap Washington receivers. I like Adam Humphries here at $2,100. He was on the field for 45% of the offensive snaps a week ago. And when you look at the value wide receivers, Carter is another guy that you kind of like, right? But, then you're looking at snap counts, you're looking at Eskridge and Freddie Swain at $2,200. These are guys that haven't really produced at all. And when you look right there at Adam Humphries, at least he's coming off a game where he had 30 yards on 2 targets. I think that he should be able to afford to maybe 5 or 6 points, but the targets have at least consistently been there. He is some part of this Washington offense in a good matchup. We also talked about the Seahawks getting beat underneath. So I think Adam Humphries is actually a really good play here if I'm not going to look to one of the even cheaper options like Freddie Swain at $2,200.
All right, Jeff, need some value here. Where are you going?
I'm going to go with Freddie Swain. I'm going to go with Freddie Swain at 2,200 here. Again, I mean, I think this is a spot where Russell Wilson could just throw 4 touchdown passes on 25 pass attempts. And I think that really brings into play some of these Seattle, really sort of down in the dumps wide receivers, you'd call. I mean, you've got Dwayne Eskridge as a guy you could target too, but he just does not seem to have any trust from the organization yet. Swain is still playing over 30% of the snaps. He's the guy who gets, the odd target downfield here in games like that. And again, I mean, I think at some point, you've got to start and just say, okay, well, if the sentiment is this low on Russell Wilson, what's probably going to happen? The exact opposite of what everyone is expecting, which is a big game. I like Freddie Swain here as just a GPP play because you're just looking at 1 or 2 targets, but if he gets in the end zone here at 2,200, it's going to be massive.
All right, Pierce, you got a value play you can use in your showdown lineup?
Yeah, Logan Thomas is going to be where I go. If you look on your DraftKings screen, it's going to show that little IR thing. He's supposed to be activated tonight, so hopefully that little IR tag sticks on there until late this evening. Otherwise, he's going to be very popular because he was looking great before he got injured. We know that Washington loves to throw tight ends. We've seen Bates and Ricky Seals-Jones play well. We know that Seattle's pass defense struggles. We know that Seattle's pass defense struggles with these short to intermediate track routes. So he should be about as safe as a value play as you can get. He doesn't have to get that touchdown. Typically, we're always looking for a touchdown from one of these value guys, but we've seen the Washington tight end volume go off the charts. So as long as he's healthy and active, he should be probably the most popular value play on the slate.
All right, it's sportsbook time. What's your favorite player prop on the board for tonight, Jeff?
I like going under on Antonio Gibson in this spot. One kind of underrated factor about Seattle, they've not been good, but I mean, their defense has really stepped it up in the run stop department. They've allowed 3.4 yards per carry over their last 3 games. Like, this Washington O-line has not been good all year. I mean, Antonio Gibson is a player too who's averaged 3.6 yards per carry or less in 3 of his last 6 games. Not an efficient running back, not an efficient O-line, and going up against a really, really good rush defense. The guys nailed it with J.D. Mckissick. I mean, J.D. Mckissick is playing on like 50% of the snaps, and the easy play here is just for Taylor Heineke to dump it off to J.D. Mckissick all game and not have to worry about pounding Antonio Gibson for 2 yards per carry, which is probably going to happen in the first, couple offensive series, and you're probably not going to see Antonio Gibson that much. I like going under on his rushing props here.
All right, Pierce, hit me with your favorite player prop.
I'm going to stick in kind of the same area there as Jeff with Taylor Heineke over 18.5 rushing yards. He's got 276 yards this season on 45 carries. That's about 6 carries a pop. So if he gives you 3 carries, he should be able to get over this. Seattle, as I mentioned earlier, one of the lowest pressure rates, one of the lowest sack rates. That's going to give Heineke a little bit more time. That's definitely going to lead to checkdowns, like Jeff mentioned. But also, other than checkdowns, it'll allow him to run out of the pocket. We saw Colt McCoy pick this team apart with a intended air yards of 4.5, I believe, just checking down nonstop, beat Seattle. But he also rushed for 18 yards in that game. And Colt McCoy is not necessarily a running quarterback, whereas Taylor Heineke definitely is. I like the check down angle, and I really like the Taylor Heineke over 18.5 rushing yards angle.
All right, Kenny, hit us with your favorite player prop.
Yeah, I'm with these guys liking Taylor Heineke, but I'm going to play a little different play on him. I like the under half an interception. I like Taylor Heineke to not throw an interception at plus 100. I know it's crazy. The guy's got 9 picks this year, but he doesn't have one in the last 2 games. And the Seattle Seahawks all season have intercepted just 4 passes. They are 30th in takeaways per game, 31st interception rate. This is a terrible secondary, folks. We've said it all segment long. I know Washington is bad as well. They may not win this game, but I don't think it's because Taylor Heineke turns the ball over. He may not perform as well as you want him to. But again, I think that plus 100, getting plus money on Taylor Heineke not to throw a pick against one of the worst defense in football, intercepting the ball, I really, really like that play. So I like Taylor Heineke under half an interception.
All right, Slate approved pick time. Pierce, what is your absolute favorite bet tonight?
Let's go with one of the specials, Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf combining, not just solo, combining for 139.5 receiving yards. I like one of them to go over. We've mentioned all segment how these pass defenses are not very good. Everyone knows that DK Metcalf is good. Everybody knows that Terry McLaurin is good, and he's the main target on that offense. And you just look specifically at what these pass defenses do. They're towards the bottom of the league in passing yards, in air yards, in yards after the catch, in depth of target. They may not give up a bunch of points. They will, but they'll definitely give up a ton of yards to these 2 receivers.
Kenny, what do we think?
I actually really like going to the player parlays as well because I like Terry McLaurin to have 125 yards and a touchdown scored rather at plus 100. But if I got to give a side or a total play, I really like the over 47.5. I just don't understand how both of these defenses stop the opposing offense. We talked about the struggles of the Seattle secondary, Washington without Montez Sweat now, as well as Chase Young. I think that both of these offenses have a big night. We see a shootout here on Monday Night Football.
Jeff, your absolute favorite bet tonight?
I like going over on Russell Wilson's passing touchdowns prop, over 1.5 passing touchdowns for Russ. It's minus 135, but again, you've got the Washington football team here. They've given up 24 passing touchdowns, the second most in the league. And look, I mean, it's Russell Wilson. Combine them with the Seahawks money line here. We got Russell Wilson versus Taylor Heineke, folks. Just take Russ. I like a big bounce back game for him.
All right, thanks, fellas. One more block to go here on the Sweat. We're going to turn our attention to Week 13 in the NFL after this quick break. We made it, you guys. Final block of the show, and we're closing it out with DraftKings contributors Piers Dietrich, Kenny Ducey, and RotoWire's AJ Scholes. Guys, this is NFL high or low. So are these Week 13 odds and lines too high or too low? Let's start with Thursday night. Saints and Cowboys back on Thursday, both coming off Thanksgiving losses. Right now, the Cowboys are favored by 5. That seems reasonable, but a lot of questions as the Cowboys are reported to have multiple positive tests, including Mike McCarthy. COVID. So let's get an initial reaction on the game total. 47.5. Cowboys went way over. Saints went way under last week. So is it too high or too low, Piers?
I'm going to go too low. Again, we were speculating who's going to suit up for the Cowboys or not, but not knowing who will play and who won't play, I got to go with what I know, and that's that this number's too low. If Alvin Kamara is going to be back, it looks like he might be. Their offensive line is definitely going to be much more healthier for this matchup. I could see them moving the ball a little bit more, at least in garbage time. And the Cowboys are going to get back Cooper. At least we expect Cooper to be back, CeeDee Lamb to be back. Their offense didn't look too terrible without those two players. Ezekiel Elliott, I know him being banged up is not helping, but their offensive line is healthy, and we've seen Pollard look pretty good in the meantime. I think both these offenses can put enough points on the board to go over this.
All right, Kenny, what do we think?
Yeah, I agree with Pierce. Look, I think that normally, if you would have asked me a few weeks ago, looking ahead to this matchup, I would have said, maybe this is a little too high. This Saints defense is good. What we've seen over the last few weeks is really a distrust of both of these defenses, right? The Saints, they're supposed to be one of the better defenses in football. They got absolutely railroaded by the Buffalo Bills on Thanksgiving, and the Cowboys didn't do much better on the defensive side of the ball. I think both of these defenses came in really to the month of November, highly touted, early in the season, some of the best units in football. They've slipped lately. They have not looked too good. I know that it's scary to back it over with Trevor Siemian, quarterbacking a team, but I do think that the Saints ultimately can get enough points on the board to make this a reality because their defense is lag behind, and so is Dallas's.
All right, Kenny, too high or AJ? Kenny just answered. AJ, too high or too low? I'm staring at Kenny, being like, AJ, okay.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
Inflating his ego even more.
I'm sorry.
Look, I agree with both of these guys. I think it's too low. So I'm going to make another recommendation for you. With the uncertainty about these COVID positives and who it may or may not be, the Saints are plus 180 on the DK Sportsbook on the money line here. I think it's worth a sprinkle. Like, just grab it, see if maybe, we don't know who it's going to be or who it could be, but if it's somebody that's impactful on this team or more than one somebody that's impactful, then you're going to see that money line really move, I think, in favor of the Saints. So go out, grab the plus 180 value, and get it now before it shifts.
All right, Bucs get the comeback win in Indy. They're 11-point favorites this week. Did the Colts game make you worry about the Bucs, or did the comeback show you that this team knows how to win? Kenny, do you expect them to have to battle with the Falcons, making this 11-point spread too high?
I mean, I don't know if anyone has to battle with the Falcons. I like that move, by the way, to show AJ. I don't know if
AJ, Kenny.
The Buccaneers are a good football team. I'm not scared about that near loss to the Colts, because the Colts are one of the better teams in the AFC too. I think that ultimately what it comes down to is this Falcons defense not being able to stop the Buccaneers at all in either facet of the game. And that's why the total is so high, right? The total's 50.5 points in this game. That's not because Matt Ryan and this Falcons offense are expected to come out. It's because the Buccaneers are supposed to come out and absolutely rout Atlanta and this defense that they've paid no attention to now for 3 years. They've not gotten better. They've continued to get worse. Buccaneers are going to come out and put the hurt on Atlanta. I think that they easily cover the 11 points, much like, the primetime game they played against the Giants a few weeks ago, rather. Right? Same sort of scenario. It was 11-point spread. This team can't be that bad. And then, boom. I know we have concern about the Buccaneers, but those probably aren't going to show themselves until the playoffs. I really like Buccaneers to go out and cover. I think this is actually too low. I would bet them up to minus 13, maybe.
All right, AJ. Kenny thinks it's too low. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Kenny here as well. And really that last game, I think spoke more to the Colts and how good of a team they actually are. They're coming off that dominating performance over the Bills the previous week. And, the tenacity of the Bucs to figure out a way to win. If you look at the Falcons, who they beat this year, you're talking Giants early in the season, Jets, Dolphins, Jags. They're not going to trouble the Buccaneers at all here. I would expect a similar margin of victory to what we saw in the first game when Brady and company won by 23.
All right, Pierce, too high or too low?
Too low. I mean, can Cordero Patterson keep this game close? I don't think he can. Jonathan Taylor really didn't have a very good game against the Buccaneers. He had one solid drive. Other than that, Tampa Bay kept Jonathan Taylor, probably the best running back in years, in check. So I don't see Cordero Patterson keeping this thing close. Atlanta is not going to move the ball in Tampa, and Tampa should just walk all over Atlanta. Just look at Kenny mentioned the Tampa Bay versus the Giants game, but look at Atlanta versus Dallas. Dallas whooped them 43-3. That's your leading indicator. Atlanta doesn't have a chance today.
All right, speaking of the Colts, they're 8.5 favorites over the Texans, who couldn't build off their win in Week 11, and they lost to the Jets. Kenny, so 8.5 is too low for this one, right, AJ?
Absolutely think it's too low here. The Colts offense has scored 30 or more points in 6 of their last 7 games, while New York is allowing 128.7 rushing yards per game and a league-high 20 TDs on the ground. I would expect Jonathan Taylor to absolutely eat this team alive. And yeah, I would expect it to go well above that in terms of the line here.
Pierce, do you agree it's just too low?
I agree. It is too low. They need to clean up the turnovers, but I don't see them making any kind of risky mistakes. Obviously you can muff a punt against anybody, so that could happen again. But even if they do, the Texans still have to do something with the turnover. I don't have much faith in the Texans after last week. And even though the Colts lost, I believe most people are looking at this Colts team as a real solid contender. Everyone knows Jonathan Taylor's a machine, and Jonathan Taylor is going to run all over the Texans. But Carson Wentz, we didn't know what to expect coming into the season. He's not great, but he's not a game manager either. And as Taylor runs better and opens up different passing lanes, we could see Wentz get closer to being a top-tier quarterback.
All right, Kenny, it's at 8.5 now. It was even lower. Do you still think this is too low here?
Yeah, I like to think of running all over the state of Texas. No, I mean, this is too low. I think this is going to be another blowout. The Texans are not a good football team. We learned that last week. Tyrod Taylor now, back-to-back weeks, he's totaled 265 yards in his last 2 outings. Like, this is not a guy that's going to beat you through the air. And, this is a game where, really the Texans, they let Austin Walter. I don't know who that guy is. I'm a Jets fan. I've never heard of this guy in my life. He absolutely cut up this rushing defense, right? The Texans. I mean, just about anybody, I think, could run the football on this team. So Jonathan Taylor against one of maybe the worst defenses in football, yeah, he's going to absolutely go up. And I don't see any way that, the Texans can score points because, the biggest thing on Sunday was, Tyrod Taylor was sacked 5 times for 52 yards. That's an average of over 10 yards per sack. It was a disaster, that offensive line. The Jets do not have a good pass rush. We managed to get to him 5 times. That does not bode well against a better Colts defense, still one that's 22nd in sack rate, but one that's probably going to control this game. So I really like the ground and pound, good defense, and the Colts win this game absolutely win by double digits.
All right, after getting blown out against the Bengals, we might expect the Steelers-Ravens line to be a little bigger, but we know Baltimore-Pittsburgh matchups are always hard fought, right? So Ravens are 3-point favorites on the road. Game total's 44. Pierce, are either of those lines too high or too low?
Tell you what, Kenny never misses an opportunity to praise the Jets. He's always going to slide one in there, doesn't he?
Of course.
Yes, this is too low. It's too low. And I'm the first person to call the Ravens frauds, and I don't believe in this team. But Pittsburgh's bad. I mean, this team is really, really bad. You look at yesterday, I don't like to say a guy's washed up or he's done, but Ben Roethlisberger is looking very, very old. If you're watching the passes, if you're watching the decisions that he was making on the field, he really should not be out there. He's got plenty of weapons, but he had a 6% pressure rate. The Bengals blitzed him a whopping 0 times, and the guy looked terrible. I know that Baltimore doesn't have a very good pass defense, but their pass rush is elite. The pressure that they put on quarterbacks, the blitzing, the quarterback knockdowns, Ben is going to be in for a long day. And I know Lamar had some issues last night, but that's just one of those things you got to deal with Lamar Jackson. He's going to have those up and down games. He has unlimited upside. I would expect him to have a good game against this Steelers team. And this 2.5 is just way too low.
All right, Kenny, what do we think?
Yeah, I agree with Pierce a lot here. I know that we want to, this is a trap, right? It's a trap game. -3 on the Ravens, a team that's, right up there in the AFC, one of the best ranked teams. I think that it's ultimately too low because when you look at the fact that the Steelers have not been able to stop the run, that's been the trademark of the Pittsburgh Steelers for so many years. They've stopped the run very well. That's how they've won football games. They have not been able to do that this year. Now you're going up against a Ravens team that thrives on the run, right, with Lamar Jackson. So I think that they ultimately control this game on the ground. I've been the biggest Steelers believer all year. I've thought that this team was actually better than a lot of people made them out to be. But this is just not the matchup for them, right? This defense is not going to – it's going to succumb to the run. I think that there are offenses that it can suffocate. The Ravens just aren't one of them. And I think ultimately when you look at the Ravens blitzing, like Pierce said, they were able to get to Baker Mayfield. Mayfield was able to get the ball out pretty quickly, pretty well I actually give him a lot of credit. But I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger is going to have nearly the same amount of sense of urgency there, nearly the same amount of pocket awareness. He goes down pretty easily. And I think that he goes down a lot, and the Ravens run away with this game.
AJ, where do you sit with these two numbers?
Well, I agree with both these guys that the game line is too low here. I do think it should be bigger favorites for the Ravens. I actually think the total might be a little too high as well. You know, you look at the Ravens, they've scored just 14 points per game over their last 3 contests. I know the Steelers haven't been exactly stout defensively this season, as evident by that disaster on Sunday. But as the guys mentioned, there's not a lot of offense that we could really expect coming out of Pittsburgh. So if they're not putting up points, I'm just not seeing how they get to the over here.
All right, that's a show, fellas. Thank you, but the fun doesn't stop. We've got Madden starting at noon with the Seahawks and 49ers. And make sure to check out the slate later today with Glash, Jeff, and Matt Meiselman talking some NFL goodness. And, of course,